Hello, everyone. We are
Hi.
so excited to
Hi.
have you here today. Hi. Um, Thank you so much to all of our attendees for being with us. My name is Dana Geisler. I lead our field sales and client experience teams here at Apartment List. Personally, I am pumped about this panel today. Let me go ahead and introduce you to our panelists. First, we have Chris Bobel from the sales side of Slack, which has to be quite the job, particularly over the last year. We have Tom Chomiak, who's the CTO and co-founder of Panelskin, but most of our clients are most familiar with LCP360. And then finally, we have Lacey Hoff, who's the owner of an event business, Crush, that had to completely transform due to the pandemic. She's also the creator of the gift boxes that you guys probably received, and if not, they are on their way. We just chatted about it. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with Tom. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So as Dana mentioned, I'm the CTO at LCP360. I'm also the co-founder and creator of Panelskin. So I guess maybe I can share some things with you guys that you really can't find Googling or on LinkedIn. Most of my partners, we were actually childhood friends. I grew up with Tom Lesak, our current SVP of sales. I've known him since I was about 5 years old, and met our CRO Tom Boston as brother Wojciech in college. We all kind of hung out together. We're close friends until one day we went out into the real world, got jobs. Eventually, Wojciech, our CEO, left his job to start a photography business that many of you know as LCP360. And about 2 years into that, he had the idea of doing more than just a photography business and wanted to build out a virtual tour platform, which is when you reached out to me to build and create what many of you now know as Panelskin. That was about 8 years ago. Luckily we survived and grown a lot since then. Currently, we have a network of around 30,000 VR photographers in over 100 countries. We work with some of the biggest names in multifamily, senior living, hospitality, and commercial real estate. And we're creating around 10,000 tours of brick and mortar business per month, and have contributed more than 270 million scenes to Google Maps through Panelskin.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Tom. Chris, how about you?
Thank you so much. I am Chris Bobel, been working for Slack for about 4 years. Started in our New York City office for 2 years and then became a remote employee and our first person in the state of Texas a few years ago. And before that, I worked at a company called Box for about 6 years, and that was the start of my business career. And before that, I was a college basketball coach.
That is quite the change to go from the college basketball over to Slack. And finally, Lacey, how about yourself?
Hi, thanks so much for having me. So nice to be here. So I started my career actually in museum design. I started as a production assistant, and I was the one that was sent to Lowe's every day to buy hardware for our engineers. I learned how to use AutoCAD. I learned how to use everything in the back of our shop, from the table saw to the panel saw. I went on to create experiences at Universal Creative for Universal Studios in Florida. I worked on the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, some of you may have heard of. Kind of a dream job for sure. From there, I went on to work for Warner Brothers in Los Angeles until 2008, when, like many of us, I was laid off from my position there and had to figure out how I was going to reinvent my career. So I decided that I had some marketing and branding experience from working at Warner Brothers and combined that with my design and production experience and went into event design. So I worked for an event agency for about 6 years and then left to start Crush Studio 5 years ago so that I could be back in the workshop and be able to tinker and build and make things. And now we do event design and production.
I am sure that there is nothing more interesting that we're going to hear than the fact that you worked on the wizarding world of Harry Potter today. So I'm very jealous.
My niece is super impressed. So.
I'm sure. So am I. So today we're here to talk about transformational pivots. COVID-19 forced us all to make changes in our businesses, and everyone was dramatically impacted. Many, of course, were able to survive, but some had to pivot, and they were able to capitalize on the changes and demands of user preferences and behaviors in a super meaningful way. I recently read this incredible article in the Wall Street Journal about how food delivery apps have been able to completely change big chain restaurants, like old restaurants such as Chili's or Denny's, for example. They were able to totally reinvent themselves in a new way by creating ghost kitchens, and ultimately change the trajectory of their business by millions of dollars. So what I want to hear from you guys, let's start by hearing about your experiences. How did your businesses operate pre-COVID? Let's start there. So Chris, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, fantastic. So for me to really understand what customers are using Slack for and how they actually work with their other coworkers, it was really important to be on site. For example, I went to United Airlines into their headquarters a few years ago and had to see how people actually interacted on the floor and what would happen in an incident where there was a delay for a particular gate. And to see how many different products and technologies that our customers would have to work with, it really helped to see that and feel that and be on the floor with them. The other part about being in person and having dinners or going to a sports event is there's a lot of opportunity to learn more about the person and what her or his goals are for the career. And at the end of the day, my whole job is to evaluate whether our technology that I represent, which is Slack, is actually a good fit and will actually help these people with their personal and professional goals. So by being in person, you get so many little vignettes into their life, into their business, where that was super important to really understand if this was a viable option for Slack to continue to pursue. So in the pre-COVID world, getting on site and getting in the hallways and meeting people was really, really important and would often expedite whether we were fit or whether we were not. And for my business of working with customers and seeing if they want to purchase our platform, getting to know very quickly is often as important as getting to yes. And being on site, meeting these people really expedited that evaluation process.
Yeah, I am certain that all of our partners who are here today really, really relate to that because they're so used to leasing apartments in person. So it's a perfect transition to me asking Tom, how did your business transition? You guys were a huge part of this for our business post-COVID.
Sure.
But
sure,
tell me
yeah,
about you for COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. So, prior to COVID, honestly, if you took away the component of being physically present in our office, our business operated in a very similar way to how it did post-COVID. Most of our team members did work in the office before COVID, but like a lot of tech companies, we already had some folks working from home either a few days out of the week or in some cases entirely remote. So a lot of our infrastructure and tools that we used were already in the cloud and really prepared for that type of remote work environment. From a business standpoint, I will say that just due to the nature of our business, it did accelerate after COVID. But we were already on this steady path to growth prior to the pandemic. So outside of really increasing headcount, our operations was already set up for expansion and scale. From a photography perspective and virtual tour perspective, previously our clients were focused more on shooting amenities and maybe like a model unit or two if it was available. But now we're seeing that there has been just a lot more focus on shooting all types of model units within their buildings.
Makes a ton of sense. And Lacey, you have probably the largest shift of all. So tell us about your business pre-COVID.
Yeah, it's been pretty transformational. So we started, we'd gotten to the point about 4 years into the business. We had a 10-person team. I would say on average, we were juggling 10 projects at any given point in time. Most of those had a lead time of 6 weeks to 3 months. Some of you may have seen one of my favorite projects, which was the trade show booth for Apartment List at Apartmentalize 2 years ago. But basically what we spend our time doing is working here in the studio, brainstorming. We do lots of whiteboard sessions where we're sketching together in person. We're combing through Pinterest and seeing what cool technologies are out there and how we can implement them to give our clients really custom brand experiences. Most of our clients are sponsoring events. So we've done things like producing the booth space for Dropbox at the Sundance Film Festival. We did the first booth for the Marriott Bonvoy Lounge, Marriott Bonvoy by Chase Lounge at Charleston Food and Wine Festival a couple of years ago. So typically after our design planning process here, we work with a fabricator to get large structures built, and then we would all fly as a team together to whatever city we were working in. We do very little work in Denver. Most of our work has been in LA or New York because we have a lot of entertainment-based clients as well. We would dive in on site, install the project, everybody gathers, we get to see everybody's reactions in person, see if everybody's interacting with the spaces the way we think they're going to. We might be making on-site adjustments. And then we take it all down and fly back home and start on the next set of projects. So we went from virtually having 10 projects lined up at a time to a period of 2 weeks just watching them tumble down. We went from doing about, I think we did 2.5% in Q2 and Q3 combined of what we did in Q1. Just to show, like, I almost cried when I did the math on that the other day, realizing what a huge difference that was. So I had a lot of free time on my hands too.
Definitely a pivot, that's for sure. While you're talking, I'll just ask you to take us then through, tell us about some of the changes that you saw, what actions you took, and ultimately the results of those actions.
Sure. So, I like to lead from a place of authenticity, and I can't say that, we turned and we made a pivot overnight. And I have one friend that turned her business into, she ended up growing her team, and things really fell into place obviously through a lot of hard work too. We were in a different position. It felt really kind of gross in that first couple of months to try to market yourself when we just didn't know what was happening in the world. So we actually took a pause and we used our time. We had storage units in Denver and LA and New York. We consolidated those and we cleaned house. And not surprisingly, considering what we do, we actually physically transformed our studio too. So we gave it a whole new makeover. We repainted everything. I took on studio mates to help pay for rent in the meantime. And I just started experimenting. I learned how to install my own hardwood floors. From that, I decided I wanted to try out doing stop motion videos. I played around with that. We started doing content shoots last summer. So many of the photos that you see on the Apartment List website, we took here in Denver last summer. And one of the other things we started playing with was doing experiences in a box and shift actually what does it look like to support virtual conferences such as this by sending out packages to people. So even though we don't have the success story of like overnight, I was able to transform it. We had several steps to get through to get there. Just using those first couple of months to kind of take a pause and regroup, take time to process what we were going through, what worked before, what do we want to change in the future, and then playing around with some different things until some more creative and fun work that really felt like up our alley started to reemerge. And we've have a lot more tricks up our sleeve now because we've played around with lots of different methods and medium of creating.
Well, I can speak for the entire Apartment List crew. Your boxes are amazing. They're the best. Chris, how about you tell us about just some of the change that you guys saw at Slack and ultimately the end results of how you did shift not being able to get in person with your clients as you described before?
Yeah, great question. So for Slack as a company, there wasn't a huge shift. We're a small company of about 2,500 people, and every single person is on Slack. Every single person has their respective office channel, whether they were in NYC or Denver, and everyone knows how to go to Help HR or to our executive Ask Me Anything channel when they had a question. So for us, we didn't have a big change. For me, being the customer facing role, what I observed was more from what my customers were going through. And Slack has a 500-person customer experience team that handles customer support issues, but we certainly don't have a 20,000-person call center. So I don't know what that's like, and what I need to do is listen and really understand what are my customers going through. So when I think of that call center example, when that agent maybe puts her or his hand in the air and says, I need help, in a former world, a performance coach or a manager could literally walk over, tap a shoulder, and say, hey, look on the screen here. This is what you need to respond to for the customer. No longer is that performance coach or manager just a few steps away, and a shoulder tap is now has to be done virtually. So what I started to see was a lot of our customers think about, well, could we do this in a Slack channel? Is this a time to use Zoom? When can we use these asynchronous tools to really help those meetings and those former coaching opportunities? So for many of my customers that were already on Slack with maybe a pocket within their engineering group or maybe a particular marketing group, what we saw was a lot of people needed one fabric to connect all of these groups, because now they're going to be physically disparate as well as being in their individual business units. So many of my customers would say, hey, can we roll this out to everyone? And a lot of the enterprise-wide use cases of our platform really came to the surface. And where Slack already had something like the Ask Me Anything executive format, not a lot of my customers did. So that became a way for COVID announcements or what the new policies around a particular procedure was going to be. And I think for a group like HEB here in Texas, they didn't have anything like that. And they said, hey, Chris, Slack is working really well with our digital group. How can we expand this to every single person that's an HEB partner? And you can see the case study on our website, but it was, again, an opportunity for us to listen and see if we could deliver what their goal was, rather than us try to push something on them and make assumptions about, well, Slack is so great, you should use it. So I think for us, it was take a step back, listen, and really seek to understand before we're sought to be understood about this is how to use Slack.
Absolutely. It's really interesting to figure out how to engage with partners from a remote capacity when everyone is trying to figure it all out at the same time together. Tom, let's hear about how your business really changed, what actions you guys took. In your case, I'm certain it was really to keep up with demand.
Yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, all of our infrastructure and tools were really prepared for a remote work environment. So, fortunately, we were able to respond quickly. I'd say that almost overnight we had everybody working from home. I think the biggest change for us really was just moving our company-wide Monday and Friday stand-ups to Google Hangouts. From a business perspective, we did see a large increase in demand for virtual tours. And really big surges in traffic to existing virtual tours. So we did have to, increase server infrastructure and headcount to our production operations teams to kind of cater to that increase in demand. But really outside of that, our team also worked on, creating guides, trainings, and really resources for our clients to educate them on how they can best use our virtual tours during the pandemic. And then, I guess some other changes we kind of saw too is like I mentioned earlier, from a photography perspective, we noticed a large shift towards capturing all types of model units. And really, it was because our virtual tours were heavily being used as to lease space. So our clients wanted to showcase all types of available units, and not just amenities.
Thanks, Tom.
Sure.
Chris, I'm going to come back to you. Can you tell us a little bit about how people have changed the way they're using Slack in this super heavy remote workforce environment?
Yeah, great question. I think one of the things that a lot of our customers have done is try to make a lot of company announcement and company information much more transparent. So in a former world where someone might email HR at company name, instead we see people asking to the CHRO or someone that leads in HR, ask a question that everyone in the company can see and almost upvote in a way to say, hey, I have anxiety about the same thing. What are we doing to address that as a company? So it's a lot more of these wall-to-wall use cases that involve every employee and disseminating information, but also collecting feedback, from people that are in now for the first time remote situations. I've seen a lot more employee resource groups start in Slack, or team channels where people have switched jobs during COVID and may have never actually met a teammate. But to feel more connected and to feel part of the company culture, they're using Slack as almost their virtual HQ. And to have some of those water cooler type channels, yeah, now there is something about how to make your sourdough bread. And everyone can contribute to that in a particular channel. And you might meet a coworker that now you have a different connection to it. One thing Slack is doing in terms of shifting our own technology is we're trying to create new products that give a more human element to Slack. So one thing we are experimenting with is, and you may have seen this before, but the idea of stories like you've seen on Instagram or Twitter, and can we do a quick video record to replace that stand-up that used to be every Friday? Or can we have an always-on audio that replaces a Zoom situation where maybe you don't want to look at the screen, but you want to be there and have an audio component to your collaboration? It feels more like what a conference room used to be instead of a one-to-one video chat. So we're trying to hear and adapt and provide new products so that people can have a new way to use Slack and it be a little more human element to it.
I can definitely tell you that it is what is the main element that keeps my team super cohesive always. And we've always had a remote team. So super appreciative about that, that's for sure. Lacey, how do you set the stage, pun intended, for change? Or how do you paint the bigger picture? Do you have any type of inspirational way of sharing like what the future might look like for you?
Sure. Well, it's funny being old enough to having been laid off for both after 9/11 and 2008. I have a couple of experiences where first thing I did was start thinking back at how transformational both of those experiences were in my life and how my career really shifted in positive ways as a result of both of those. And in both of those situations, I just tried out new things and I continued to play until I found a career path that lined up with both my interests and salary interests, salary desires. So I really tried to prime our team for that we will get, this too shall pass. We will get through this. But I also tried to encourage the team to try out new things. So we I got a masterclass path for our team so that we could, whether it's gardening that you're interested in or cooking, just gravitate towards those interests and see where they lead you. And one of our girls actually started a food blog in the last year, and now she developed her photography skills and styling skills. And so that allowed us to actually work on content shoots in the last month for a new product that's launching. And we set them up here in our studio, and we were doing overhead shoots and stop motions around them. So for me, it's really been about taking, what feels fun and playful, and what am I being driven towards. I'm probably on the ADHD spectrum, and so I get bored really quickly. So sometimes having these wrenches thrown into things, it's like, okay, this is our next challenge. Like, how are we going to solve this? And being events people, I think ultimately, hopefully we have a good design eye. I think we do. But really our biggest job is always just solving problems. And so I think that really lends itself well to just figuring out, hey, we can't do events in person. So we can either shoot spaces, whether it's doing set design. I actually got to work on a commercial shoot for 2 weeks this year. So you're doing spaces, but without all the people, or you're doing the people, but without all the spaces in the form of gifting. And so when we started doing gifting, we took a more playful approach to it, I think, than a lot of other people have. And we actually sent out some Valentine's Day gift boxes for our clients this year, and a couple clients that we hadn't worked with since we were producing events actually reached back out, and they were like, wait, can you guys do more gift boxes like that for us? And it was all just coming from this sense of play, I think. So I think that's what led us throughout the last year when we weren't crying. Having a world
Totally. Tom, can you tell me about a time when you had to really reimagine your vision for your team or a product or a certain initiative because the current one just wasn't working for you anymore?
Yeah, so being part of a tech startup, that happens a lot. You have to be agile, especially in our earlier days. We'd make decisions over coffee. We've gotten a lot more organized since then. One of I guess the most recent examples that I can kind of think of is not really reimagining our product because it wasn't working, but really reimagining on how we can make it work better. So we have a meeting tool that allows you to take someone on a guided walkthrough of a virtual space. And when COVID hit, some of our clients' leasing centers started to close down. So we saw a tremendous increase in the usage of our meeting tool. And suddenly when, going to our clients' websites, we started seeing modals pop up saying, hey, our leasing center is closed, but schedule a virtual walkthrough with us. And our clients started relying on our tool more and more. We started getting some really great feedback on what we can do to make it better. And as a result, we added some cool new presenter tooling, the ability of inviting someone to a virtual meeting through a text message. But without really kind of giving away too much of our future roadmap, I can say that COVID has it's really caused us to reimagine some of our tools, and the recent updates to our meeting tool is really just one example of what's to come.
I love that. Thank you so much, Tom. We have 1 minute left. I can't believe how quickly this time has gone. So I'm really quickly going to ask each of you, what's next for you? Chris?
I think what's next for me is making sure that the initial impetus of maybe new people using Slack, we find better ways to continue to connect them to their employees and whatever their company mission is. Our mission is just to make whatever your working project is just a little bit more pleasant, a little bit more productive, and hopefully a little more simple. So continuing to iterate and making sure that we keep impressing and delighting our customers, I think is pretty key. And I think a lot of that is actually just leading with empathy and knowing that if you have a job, we should be fortunate for that. And if we can make that experience a little better, remembering that I'm in a very grateful position where I have employment and want to make sure that as we continue to work with our customers, whatever their next goal is really our next goal to help that just a 15% or so.
Lacey, how about you?
Well, as much as we've loved the experiential gifting, I do think that we're coming back to events as we start to see them reemerge with just a renewed sense of interest. And we got to have our first whiteboard session planning for Apartmentalize this year. And we were just, we're all fully maxed in our office now. And so we were like at the whiteboard the other day, and we're getting really jazzed to start working on some big builds again. I think we're going to expand and keep working on set design. We've really had a lot of fun doing on-camera work and the content shoots, and hope to fold some interior design into that as well. And I think we'll continue to do the experiential gifting, but as a supplement to our events, a little bit more similar than we have in the past. But, you know, at the beginning of this, I wasn't even sure if I was going to come back to events because they are very taxing. But I think this year has given me the chance to really evaluate, and it's just brought a lot of lightness and renewed energy for diving back in.
Amazing. And finally, Tom, what's next?
Yeah, well, just just being hyper focused and making sure Panelskin is the best possible virtual tour platform, and that LCP 360 can be the greatest partner to our multifamily clients. I think what's next for us is just spending more time understanding the needs of our multifamily partners as the world around us changes, and really just building out appropriate solutions for those needs. So that being said, there are a lot of cool new things that we have in our development roadmap that we're cooking up. So if you aren't already, I do encourage you to please follow us.
Thank you all so much for being here. This is a great session. Happy Spark, everyone.
Thanks, Dana.
Bye.